Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Right off the bat, Skype was giving us a little bit of connection issues, so if there's some drops and stuff, I apologize, and I'll probably cut those out of the podcast anyway. But we're going to go ahead and get right in the high tempo. I'm going to kick it off this week, Matt, because I have something for you. I was watching the Orlando Apollos game, and at the same time, I had on good authority that you were celebrating Steve Spurrier's offense. So I wanted to give you a chance to speak on that because I didn't know you were such a huge Steve Spurrier fan as a Florida State fan.
Well, I am not a Steve Spurrier fan, but as we talked about last week on our show, one of the AAF is doing is that they're running a lot of contests that are constant. And so with one of the plays that they scored their touchdown on was a play that we run, and they followed it up with a 2-point conversion play that we run. So they were running some similar things, and I think it's important for the kids to see that those concepts are being applied from the high school level up through college, up through the pros, and trying to get them as much exposure to understand sort of logic to what we're doing, and it's not just throwing spaghetti off the wall. It's stuff that's been proven time and time again to be effective.
And I'll say that comes a week after we were just talking about how old school the AAF was, hiring these dinosaur coaches, only to find out that your man, Steve Spurrier, and you have the same offensive concepts. I know he scored a touchdown on one, and he scored a 2-point conversion, I believe. You don't have to deny it. You can just admit that you love Steve Spurrier, and he's going to win a championship in the AAF. He's going to get what he has. He didn't get a Super Bowl. I'll cut him some slack there, but he did get a national championship, so why not get the first championship in the AAF? I know you're rooting for him.
We should, because they have a stable of Florida State guys.
Well, that is true. They are in a hotbed of Florida, and I think that Atlanta would get all the Georgia guys. I think that they're in a bit with Birmingham getting all the Alabama and Auburn players. That kind of splits it up a bit. But Florida's still there because you're picking from a top team from two conferences, SEC and ACC, along with Miami too. So they do get a better pick, I believe, of all the schools. So, but what do you got for high tempo this week?
This week in high tempo, it's just nice to be back in the swing of seeing some winning by the Noles. The women's softball team ranked, starting out hot. With our coaches last year here, the NCAA's all-time winningest baseball coach. They're off to an undefeated start. Basketball's undefeated. And Florida State signed Clements from Houston and fired Frey. So upgraded the offensive line situation, just positive vibes all around.
Yeah, that looked like they had that lined up because I thought it was weird that they fired Frey like just seemingly in the middle of February, but then they announced the hire like almost immediately, unless I missed the timeline by a day or so. But I find it interesting that you asked me what I was doing for high tempo so that we didn't have any overlap, like you thought I would be praising Florida State. Shame.
Well, yeah, I forget what thing I was looking for, and I lost it. I think maybe you'd rid of that band because once that train leaves the station, it's too late to get on board.
We'll see. I already saw, I forget what site it was, but someone was already contemplating that Willie Taggart's career was already over at Florida State, like it was doomed to failure. So, I mean, he's going to have a hot seat coming into the season. And we'll see. We'll see how long he sticks it out.
Yeah, he does. But the thing that I don't understand is why that seat is so hot right now. Knowing what he had inherited coming in, and comparatively, I feel like they're ready to fire him right now, or the fan base is ready to fire him for the most part, and they haven't even given him a fair shot. I think it's really, really bad the situation that they're putting themselves in, because if they run Taggart out, then what decent coach is going to want to go there? They're going to set it up so you end up pushing yourself back to the undesirables.
I agree, and they had such a great situation coming from Bowden. It was almost like Penn State. When you have a coach there for so long, now obviously those ended in totally different directions, but you have the stability. You can sell that to other coaches, and everyone should want to line up there because you have two programs that had longevity and were proven to be able to win national championships. And Florida State ended up in the better of the two situations. And now it looks like, okay, you had another coach come in, win a national championship. Why aren't their coaches lined up? Oh, wait, here we are. It looks like they're actively sabotaging Willie Taggart, and it's only going to make it harder for them to bring someone else in. So I agree with you. You're exactly right there. Let's go on. Speaking of sabotage and things that are not going right, Manny Machado signs with the Padres today. Outrageous contract. It was rumored last week to be $250 million, and I was still seeing Pirate beat writers put out that they thought that he was going to have a good chance to sign with the Pirates. You have to be out of your mind to think that Nutting was going to spend any money at that number. And I know he has an opt-out after his fifth year, I believe, on this contract, which means a lot of that money might not end up getting paid. I don't know what the entire payout is, but the Pirates had zero chance of signing Machado. Zero chance. You could have bet the farm against it. They're not going to sign a guy like that. 5 years, 10 years down the road when he's trying to make a comeback, sure, they'll sign him to a minor league deal and try to bring him up for a promotion. Because it's like whenever they brought in, I think it was Jose Mesa, the one who was like in the 2000s. This might have even been before Bob Nutting. Everyone's like loving it. That's the Pirates. They're going to sign the aging vet to bring in. I mean, they couldn't even land Troy Tulowitzki. They're not going to sign Manny Machado. Give me a break. I don't know how people were shocked over this news, because I saw a lot of people arguing and coming out and defending the Pirates that it wasn't their situation. The Phillies are in the bidding for Bryce Harper. Same state. I know they have a bigger market per se, but there's no reason why Pittsburgh, a championship city, can't get an owner to bring recruits in. I mean, they can do it for every sport, but baseball, get real. So that's my baseball news. Big signings happening. Not a lot of heat coming out of Pittsburgh. And even our friends Detroit, it's looking like it's going to be another low year for baseball on the Southbound Sports Show. But Matt, you have anything you want to add on baseball?
I don't understand how, one, the salaries in Major League Baseball are insane. I don't know how you justify $300 million to play a sport. I truly don't get it. And with the size of these deals, to go from Machado and Harper saying, well, we're gonna potentially threaten to strike because the owners are colluding and not being willing to pay us our fair share, to now it seems like Harper's more than likely going to sign a deal with the Phillies, and Machado just signed with the Padres. Like, what was their collusion on the player side to try to strong-arm the league into getting these bigger deals? Because Major League Baseball, I don't think, wants a strike. I don't know that would be good for Major League Baseball business. It would definitely hurt the lower market teams like the Pirates, who are banking on those early season sales, ticket sales and things like that, some of those early season promotions.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know why anyone as a fan would cheer for lower teams knowing that other teams can just outbid based on who the owner is. So if you have an owner that isn't going to pay and hasn't paid, even when you have a winning core, why would you cheer for that team? Why would you invest your own money to go see them? Because you're just getting lied to. If they want to put that money in, they can do it. As long as they're turning a profit, why does it matter how big that profit is? I mean, it's baseball. Yeah, it's a business, but to a lot of these businessmen, it's a hobby. This isn't their primary source of income. Unless, I guess, you're a legacy, or like your father or mother gave you the team, and then that's like your only thing. But a lot of guys, they have other businesses. This is just to help promote themselves and get their name out there, I'm pretty sure. So when you have $300 million contracts, what they do is they spread them out like Machado's deal and give themselves and the players an opt-out. So this one's, 5 years? So he'll get some of the money, but they'll still be strong-armed into paying him. And I think the reason you see it in this sport compared to others is if you're in the league in baseball, you can last a very long time. You don't have a risk. I mean, it's really fluke to get broken bones in baseball or injuries that could be career-ending. Pitchers, yeah, they have Tommy John, and I think that's why you don't see their names in this stratosphere like you do with hitters. Like Alex Rodriguez, he could play for when he got that big contract. I think that was before they knew he was on steroids or whatever. But like Machado, you think that he's going to be around even if his batting numbers dip off. You're hoping that he can sell tickets for you for that long. And so I think hitters are at an advantage over pitchers. Pitchers could get hurt at any time. Batters, I mean, you have to get pegged by the ball, maybe hit at the plate, take it weird on your elbow or something, a run, land the wrong way. It's almost like there's a fluke chance of getting hurt once you reach that peak level. And only a handful of players do it. But looking at it, as a casual fan, you have to know that only 5, you could even say a third, if you're going to be generous. A third of the teams are going to be in on bidding these big players. And if you're one of those ones that has an owner that isn't going to bid, you're never, ever going to have that opportunity to get that excitement level build up. Padres, I don't think are going to be winning this year. I'd be shocked if they made the playoffs. But they signed a big name free agent to give their fans something to cheer about. So I don't know. I'm a fan of salary cap. What about you, Matt? Do you think they should have a salary cap in baseball?
I don't know. I mean, the thing that I just keep thinking about these $300 million contracts is who's advising Kyler Murray? Like, I don't see how you can. There's that kind of money being offered to Major League Baseball. You're not even going to scratch anything near that with an NFL deal unless the advertisements and the off the field stuff pays exponentially that much more for football compared to Major League Baseball.
I think that's where the difference is. I think Major League Baseball's really strict on upfront money from the draft, sort of like the NFL. I think if he's taken within the first 15 picks of the NFL draft, which I'll be honest, I'll be surprised if he is. I think he has a chance to make more money that way and then fall back on baseball. And I could be wrong, but I think the way the draft's slated for Major League Baseball is you don't get that big free agent contract until after a few years. And they did that to keep lower revenue teams afloat. I think that's their compromise right now for having the salary cap for the teams like the Pirates and other teams that have to build through the draft. You have so many years with the player, but once they hit that age, like Machado did, because he's been a big name player for a while on that early contract. Once he hits that, then it's go wild. But maybe Kyler Murray was he going to be a pitcher though? Because that's the deal. Like with the pitcher, you never know. Like when Samardzija went and he was a pitcher for the Cubs, like to me that was a shocking deal because you're a wide receiver in the NFL. You could stick around for a long period of time playing a slot receiver like Wes Welker did or even like Julian Edelman. You can carve that out compared to a pitcher. Like I don't even know if Samardzija's still around. So it's much harder. Now if Murray was going to be an outfielder, which is what I think he was, then you're 100% right, Matt. Maybe he'll double dip, though, play quarterback for a few years, I mean, backup quarterback has to be the sweetest gig. Never get hit at practice. You just hang out. People
hold the clipboard.
Yeah, people might know your name, but you get the big money contract and just never turned it into. I don't know. But I think that that's what the difference is that you're seeing, is that football and like even the NBA, there are certain contracts, like you get your rookie deal, and then after that is up, whatever the time period is, that's whenever you hit the open market, and that's whenever you see ridiculous max contracts in the NBA and the NFL, where you can keep guys relatively young. The NFL does a better job of getting, and I think it's just because of the hype the NFL draft has gotten, because everyone tunes in. They've made it so that the first pick is super valuable, and they make an outrageous contract, and teams have no guarantee that that pick's even going to work out. That's why I'm a strong proponent of picking a lineman or a defensive player first if you have one of those top picks. I'm not high on quarterbacks because you don't want to be wasting salary on a quarterback that may or may not work out. And you see it every year. Multiple guys. Like, look at Cleveland. How many quarterbacks have they drafted with their first-round pick over the years? What happens? You just keep wasting money, and you can't build that core. So, anything else you got on that?
No, I think you pretty much squared it away.
All right, I got this one. I know you saw it too, but Rivals. Let's see. I think I have my my notes on my phone. Is a recruiting service. We talked about college football signing day a couple weeks ago, but they are one of the two that are left. They back in the day, it used to be Scout and Rivals, and then CBS had their own little thing, which turned into 24/7 Sports. ESPN tried to dip in late. I don't even know when they started, 2005, 2006. But these other ones were around back on the dawn of the internet. Scout and Rivals had their own message boards. They were competing. So like some teams, fans congregated on their Scout forum. Some others were on Rivals. They each had a paid message board. Eventually 24/7 started a composite where they took the rankings from all these other sites and eventually ended up buying Scout. So it's 24/7 and Rivals is really all that's left of the big three, which CBS turned into 24/7 or vice versa. They bought out. I forget how it happened. But ESPN's kind of on their own. No one really takes them serious. Even the 24/7 doesn't add ESPN rankings into their composite. But Rivals is still one of the ones that feeds into 24/7. So they add a recruit, Blake Carringer, a tackle, 6'6", 315 pounds from Tennessee. So a bunch of high school kids. This is a rumor. It kind of got shut down, and of course it's going to get no press because CBS owns 24/7. They're not going to publish a big article about how they got tricked into their database. They did put out a statement, but I'll get to that in a second. So a bunch of high school kids make this recruit on Twitter. Tweet out that he got an offer from Alabama. Rivals immediately, they must have someone or pay some service to troll tweets for people that say that they're committed or that they've received an offer. They see that, they add him to their database. No tape on the guy. Nothing. They immediately give him a 3-star based on that Alabama offer. Since he's in their database now, 24/7's composite goes ahead and adds him. And so he's listed on both of the major recruiting sites. So, Matt, what are your thoughts on this? How is that even possible?
It follows right in line with the talking points that we had over the last couple weeks as we were talking about signing day. There's no real means of evaluating these different prospects. And yeah, they have the opening and they have some of these Under Armour and Nike camps that they're evaluating some of the prospects, but it's just tough to get a true gauge on, these different prospects. And you see it all the time with guys that go undrafted or that say, well, I was no stars coming out of high school or 2 stars coming out of high school. A lot of these big name guys, they're coming from places that they were either low graded or not graded at all. And I think if you're coming from a more prestigious program, you're more likely to get tagged versus someone who's coming that maybe is just as talented, if not more. And it kind of feeds into the politics of everything. I think you end up missing out if you're not going to these camps and giving yourself the exposure. They're only pulling from a limited pool, so it makes sense why they got catfished.
Yeah, and as a coach, you have to get your players out. And I know I talked and I was probably long-winded on this whole scenario. So if you want to go back and listen to our recruiting day episode, is from either last week or the week before. But as a kid, and if you don't have the money to go to all these camps, you're basically living on your offers. So a lot of them, what they do is they'll just tweet them out. But you would think that someone would have cross-checked with Huddle or Max Preps or one of the other football sources to try to see if he was real. I feel like Max Preps now is large enough as a high school database that anyone could have easily checked to see if he was on the roster. I mean, to me, that's just inexcusable. Maybe they had an automated thing do it where they were paying, or they created a bot, paid for a bot or something that just scraped every commit, and they had a ranking system. Because I imagine it wouldn't be that hard to tier out schools. Like, okay, Alabama offers worth this many points, and you just tally them up, and that's how they come up with the star system. Like, if you get an offer, like, you have to have at least 5 to 10 offers from the big schools: Alabama, Florida, Florida State, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, USC, Notre Dame. You get a bunch of those, you're automatically a 4-star. But if you get over a ridiculous amount, 25 to 30, then we'll evaluate you ourselves to see if you can get that 5th star. Like, I'd imagine that's how it works. And it wouldn't be that hard to create a bot that just scrapes your Twitter profile to see how many recruits there are. I mean, or commits or offers that you're putting out there. But I would think that they would have someone to check. In their defense, coaches aren't allowed to comment on players until either they sign with that school or they sign somewhere else. So you're not really able to commit. I think the rule is, and I believe I heard someone say this from the NCAA, that if a player puts that they commit, a coach can go ahead and like that tweet, maybe not retweet it, or maybe retweet it. There's some rule there that as long as the player says it first, the coach is allowed to like it to confirm that it's real. But I would think that that's very hard for a recruiting service to keep track of which coach is liking which player's tweets. To me, that's almost ridiculous. So, I mean, you're a coach. What do you do if you have guys that want to play at the next level? How do you prepare them for that?
Well, I think the big thing is that it's the education and getting them to understand it's the weight room, it's the grades, it's the off-field behavior. It becomes that mindset, and getting them to understand it's not, I think there's so much talk about it that it's tough to get kids to truly buy in and do the work that's necessary. And I think that's the number one thing that I see separating a lot of kids is just within a high school program, that the number of people who are willing to put the work in that you need to be successful at the college level is rare. There's always so many other things and opportunities that kids can get into these days that it's easier for them to opt into these other things instead of putting the extra time into lifting and getting stronger, doing things to improve their grades, things like that.
Oh, grades is a big one. And that reminds me that I did see a recruit this year, and I can't remember what school, but he waited until the second signing day in February to try to sign with one of the major schools. And the reason they didn't accept him in December was due to grades. And he went on a scorched earth Twitter rant about loyalty because he brought his grade up to a 2.0 or 2.5 or something needed to qualify. And I just thought, wow, you're admitting that your grades are in high school that low, and you're complaining that your offer got taken by someone else because it even had to get to that point. You're a senior. Your grade point average is like a 2, which is what, a C? C average, and you want to play D1 ball. Like, there's a good chance that even if they did take your offer, how are you going to commit to getting your grades up in college? So if you're a high school recruit listening to this, focus on your grades. You got to at least have, I would think in my mind, a 3.0 and up to get ready for college ball, because the workload is going to slam you. So that's another thing. That's a big point, Matt. Grades, bring them up and make sure that you have that work ethic, because college, I mean, sure, they have tutoring groups, but they're not going to hand you your diploma. I mean, there's some jokes there for some schools, but overall, you got to know what you're doing. Anything else you want to add on recruiting stuff?
Just the other thing that athletes need to understand is that it depends on the school, and it depends on the politics end of it. You could be the world's greatest quarterback, but if a certain school isn't taking a quarterback in that cycle, then you're not going to get that offer. So there's some of that players have to understand, and I think that goes down to building relationships with the coaches and being able to reach out now and do a lot of the questionnaires and things like that, and start getting in contact with coaches and getting a feel for how things are going to be. And if you have that relationship, then there's a good chance that they may take a chance on you, knowing what your character and your personality are.
Oh, there was I have one more thing. So 24/7, I mentioned that they were going to put out their statement. They did, and they said that they're not automatically adding recruits to their database anymore for the composite until they're able to verify or add them to their own database. So they're no longer going to pull in basically from rivals, because I believe the composite is only those 2 sites at this time anymore. Used to be 3 or 4, but now it's just they've all eaten each other. But you're right. Whenever you get down to it, you have to know the feeling. And my last point that I wanted to make is, with the 2 signing periods, if you want to make sure that you have an offer, sign in December. I see a lot of people complaining that there's not the same signing day jitters. Well, if you're worried about losing your spot, sign. Then your spot is secured. If you don't sign, or the coach says, hey, we're not giving you an offer at this time, then you have a few more weeks to look around and find a spot that could take you. So if you're number one, like Matt said, if they're not taking a quarterback, and in December you're thinking, I'm going to sign with this school, go ahead and tell a coach that you're ready to sign, and he'll tell you right then if he's going to take you or not. And then if he's like, well, wait until February, you know that you need to look for a plan B. So let's go ahead and shift gears here a little bit. France, I put it on here. France decided that lightsaber dueling is now a form of fencing, but it's not fencing in its traditional form. This is what the kicker is. So the question is lightsaber dueling a sport? And I'm going to get your answer here in a second, Matt, when I get to the rules. So it's not actual fencing. Lightsaber dueling has its own rules where you cannot stab with the lightsaber because it's not cool looking to the audience. To get a point, you actually have to point the lightsaber behind you and use big sweeping motions. If you don't do that and you try to do something quick like a jab, it doesn't count. So that it's more for the theatrics, I would say. So based on that description, do you consider that a sport?
I'm going to say yes. I'll count it.
Are you going to elaborate?
Because I guarantee, if you participated in said activity for, I'll say 3 minutes, and I'm just 2 or 3 minutes, the majority of young students, young kids, young people would be gasping for breath and be out of breath and feel a cardiovascular burn. So I'm going to count that as a sport based purely on the merit that, yeah, you're going to get some physical activity out of it. I'll count it.
All right. I agree with you on the sport aspect. whenever you have countries like the United States pushing for esports in the Olympics, which to me is almost outrageous because each game is different. And how are you going to allow one type of game in versus another when there are like 20 to 100 games released every week? Like, how are you going to regulate that? That's almost impossible. You would have to have all the major companies come together and make like one Olympic sprint game where you have all these styles put together into one. But lightsaber, that's very simple. It's almost like fencing. I just wish that they made it more like fencing so that it was practical, that if you needed to do some type of sword play for self-defense, like you're vacationing with pirates and someone hijacks your boat, you can defend yourself. Because if a real pirate came up to you and you're only using these big lightsaber sweeping motions, most likely you're dead. So it's almost like they're taking dancing. Because I imagine it's almost like the color guard. That's the ones with the flags, right, Matt? Color guard, they're out there, they're twisting them around. That's what it's going to remind me of. And I haven't seen it. I tried to find some videos, but all I could find was a lot of angry comments because people are mad that this is a sport because it's very nerd-like. But I agree. If it's going to get people that would normally not exercise to exercise, and I liken it to Pokemon Go, because before people would just sit on their couch and play video games, but then it gave you the incentive to get up and, get some exercise because you had to walk, was it like 5 kilometers or something, to hatch an egg. Like that is something that's physical. So lightsaber duels, I wonder how many people will actually sign up. And maybe, who knows, maybe it will get added to the Olympics. But starting in France, we'll see if it makes its rounds. I think we both agree that it is a sport. Now, getting into
more of a sport than the esports.
Well, I think it comes down to, do you consider chess a sport? Because that one has almost no physical activity. It's more of like a mental game. And then esports, at least you're using your fast muscle fibers, depending on what it is. Now, if it's more of a strategy game, because there are different games, like a fighting game, like if you're playing Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, that is going to be, to me, that's more sport-like than if you're playing like a turn-based, oh man, I don't even know. Some game that you just take turns, like almost like chess. I know how people consider that a sport, but to me, that's more like a game. And I don't see why there can't be like a different category for that, almost like poker. That's a game. You're not doing anything physical, you're doing more mental stuff. So just have a different classification for it. Sure, ESPN puts it on. Sure, they put on some back and forth chess matches or whatever, even the spelling bee. But I wouldn't count the spelling bee a sport. Just like a mental game. Come up with a new word for it and classify it there. But we'll see. If they add it, I'll be just amazed that it got added, and I want to know what the bribe was that the Olympic Committee took. Because we know they've all been taking bribes. I think there's one, as I was looking into this lightsaber thing, there's a case in Japan, I believe, where one of their leaders is being investigated for Olympic bribes. So every country has a guy. I feel like every couple of months we hear about a new bribe. We know soccer did it with the World Cup. So let's go on. Let's get into something more wholesome, some football. So Antonio Brown goes and meets with Rooney today. He puts out a tweet. It's fairly long, so it was an Instagram post or something. It's fairly long, so of course I'm not going to read it on the show. But basically saying that they had a good talk and they aired some grievances or something like that. And they agreed that a trade is best. Well, what are we talking about here? We knew that a trade was in the works since probably January. And I did make a mistake. I thought that trades could happen like a week or two after the Super Bowl, but apparently it's like March 6th. So last week I went on record saying that I would think that a deal was going to be done in the next week or two. Apparently we have to wait until March 6th for that to happen. Now with that, the Broncos traded for Joe Flacco And I'm not even certain how that works. So they agreed to him a trade in terms, but they can't actually do anything until March. So who's to say that someone else doesn't come back with a better offer? I don't think it's binding until March. So Flacco could be moving. We don't know. I'm pretty sure that's set in stone. I don't think the NFL would break their gentleman's agreement, but that could affect the Antonio Brown timeline. I still don't know who would want him. Why would you invest money in an aging wide receiver that causes drama in the locker room? I mean, he's coming off a season where they didn't even make the playoffs. And they were in the position to. And if you honestly look down at the season, they needed one more win, and they lost to Oakland. They lost to the Raiders. A sorry team. So, Matt, what do you think of this whole situation?
I can't believe that it's going on in Pittsburgh. I can see it happening in Cincinnati or Cleveland, but it's so bizarre. I feel like, and then AB's like, he's posting all this stuff. I'm actually surprised that he hasn't been triggered for a random drug test because of like some of the crazy stuff. He's putting himself to be like known as like Mr. Big Chest or something like that. Did you see that?
No, I'm glad I didn't.
He's like, he doesn't want to be called AB anymore. He wants to be like Mr. Big Chest or something like that.
Oh my God, it's almost like an XFL nickname. Could you imagine? That wouldn't even sell any shirts. No kid would be like, you know what, I want to be named Big Chest on the back of my jersey. No one would buy that.
Mr. Big Chest.
That's even worse. I don't even know how you come up with that, but go ahead.
But I think like he's really aggressively painting. Like I understand what he wants, and he's trying to get he still has 3 years left on his deal. He's trying to get his contract reworked where he's getting more upfront guaranteed money, which as an aging vet, absolutely you want to cash in one last time. Pittsburgh's holding the cards though. They're in no position. They have no need to force him out the door and take less of a value. And I think Pittsburgh would be foolish to trade him anywhere for what they may consider. They need to get an offer or some kind of compensation that's going to benefit them. And if it means waiting, then so be it. I mean, in a true big dick move, what they could do is just draft another wide receiver and then don't play him. There, sit on the bench and play out your 3 years. Like you don't have to make a move at all. You don't have to play him. If you're going to be an asshat, then there you go. Don't play.
Well, we've been having this. I know Jeff couldn't come on tonight. I was hoping he would be on so that we could hash this out on the show. He thinks that the Steelers can get a number one for him. I didn't think that was possible because what team would be willing to take? It's such a gamble. And I saw a couple of the NFL insiders putting that they would have to give up maybe that they would get a second or third round, possibly even a fourth round in return for him. And to me, that's just ridiculous, and it's not even worth it. Why even trade him, like you said at that point, Matt? You'd be better off just stashing him on the bench and making an example, and maybe that would help turn your locker room around, because we all know that's the issue. I mean, you're running dangerously close to losing Ben Roethlisberger, and I think when that happens, this team takes a nosedive because the locker room's a mess. So if he goes down, yikes, look out. It could be bad. And you have the Browns, they look like they're taking everybody. They signed Kareem Hunt. I think we talked about that last week. They're taking gambles out there and trying to build a competitive team. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh's just kind of trying not to fall apart. Every big-time player they have, they're getting rid of. And we'll see, too, because Bell, what's going to happen to him? He hasn't signed anywhere yet that I know of. So, I mean, I haven't had him on my search radar because why would I be caring what he's up to? But I'm sure they would come across the NFL ticker if he signed somewhere. But I don't know. Anything else you got for the NFL?
No, those were essentially the big things. But I think Pittsburgh's taking the steps to clear their locker room. I saw C.J. Anderson had put a plug out saying that he feels like with the stuff that's being done in Oakland, he feels like John Gruden's doing the things in terms of preparation and things like that to get the Raiders turned back around. So I think for as much as we were in on them and saw them just completely flame out, that there is potential something brewing in Oakland. And interesting to keep an eye on that in the upcoming season or two. Well,
let's be honest. We really need John Gruden to work out because we have some people that attack us constantly about him failing. So, Tony Dungy, I'm talking to you. We need to get John Gruden to get back in the winner's circle. I mean, if he could win one more Super Bowl, that would be great. So get that done, Gruden. You can wait till Ben wins another one or Tom Brady wins 2 more. Then you can get yours. But you only need one more to get Tony Dungy off our back. But let's go ahead and get into the AAF now. Everyone thought that the NFL was kind of bankrolling this league. And to be honest, I don't see why they would. Why the NFL doesn't need a developmental league. I don't know where everyone's getting this idea. They think, I honestly think it's a lot of people that watch the NBA and think, okay, well, the NBA has this D League now. You know how many versions of that they had that have failed? The D League, the G League. I think it is the G League now. They've had it, but it's not going to ever be like minor league baseball because those teams have some affiliation and they've had them for so many years and there's so many teams that they're almost like a feeder system. In the NBA, it will never work like that because let's be honest, the NBA, you have to be a certain size to play in the league. You can come from a D2 or D3 school and be a great ball handler, but if you're not over 6'7" now, I mean, you have very slim chance of making it into the league. No amount of time in the G League is going to ever change that. So NFL is almost in the same boat. You get guys that you're going to hit your physical peak by age 27. It doesn't matter if there were 32 developmental teams feeding in. All that is going to be done is to stash marginal players in case someone gets hurt, almost like the NFL already has with the practice squad. These guys aren't getting a chance to be called up. They're just not. We talked about it last week. I wanted to see the AAF come out and sign big-name college guys that I thought didn't get their fair shake. And I went down through the rosters, and I watched a few games over the weekend. And to be honest, like Trent Richardson was a name that stood out to me that I thought, okay, this is a big-name guy from college that could possibly make that jump. But most of the other teams, nah. There's only like a handful of guys that can make that jump. So why would the NFL want to pay for that? It just doesn't make any sense. The guys either have it or they don't. And if they're even close, they're going to be stashed on a practice squad. And there's no way they're going to get put on an AAF team unless the NFL completely buys the league. And they had a chance. What was that league that they had, Matt, with Johnny Manziel? They didn't even televise it. It was like almost like a 4-team tryout for Manziel. They put it together once the XFL and those other leagues were announced, and they're like, you know what? We're going to do our own developmental thing, but nah, no one's going to be able to watch it because they don't care. So, and where I'm going with this is AAF comes out that they missed payroll after week 1. They didn't have the money, is a rumor. People didn't get paid. They said that it was a payroll glitch. Week 2 rolls around, and they told them that they were going to get paid either today or tomorrow. And today it's announced that the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes buys the entire league for, I think, $250 million. And I'll say, down here in Carolina...
Well, invested in it. I don't think he bought
No, he owns it.
League.
He bought the entire league. He's the owner. So he is on the chair. If you read it, he is the chair now. He bought the entire league, and There are other controlling interests. So people own whatever, but he's like the main majority owner. He owns almost the entire league. And a lot of people down here are really mad about it because he just bought the Hurricanes. Was it last year we talked about that? I feel like it was before the season. And now they're thinking that he's not going to invest money in the Hurricanes roster if he has a chance for this league to end up being purchased by the NFL. I think it's a lofty goal. I think the only reason the NFL would even consider doing it is due to the XFL. And if they own a minority league that's tied to the NFL, they're hoping that they can use their brand power to keep the XFL, I guess, in ruins or keep it away. But your thoughts, Matt, as a financial thing, do you think this could even work out?
Well, to me, I feel like the AAF was rushed because of the announcement that Vince McMahon was going to reboot the XFL. And unless someone can prove otherwise, that's what I believe. That they saw that as a legitimate threat because McMahon grew potentially from the mistakes that he made launching it the first time. And I feel like on some levels there were successes. It obviously flamed out after that first year, but there were a lot of things that he did during that time that were very positive. And if you find that documentary on it, for some of you, the listeners that weren't active with the XFL, it's a good watch on how things played out with the XFL the first time around. But I feel like as they were kickstarting, it was like all of a sudden you had the NFL former players and people trying to jumpstart the new league, and they were trying to market it and brand it as something different. But then the first week, we talked about how it was like the same old recycled stuff that we've seen from the late 90s. So it was like there's no innovation scheme-wise. There's no changes and things that really like jump out at you. It's just low-grade, low-level football.
To be honest, I don't even think it's exciting or as innovative as college football. Like, it's not even as good a product. The players make more mistakes. I've seen more fumbles on special teams than I have watching, how many games I watched during college football season? 50? Maybe more? I mean, I don't remember seeing that many kickoff fumbles or punt fumbles the entire season. So you have a couple weeks of poorly rushed teams, like you said. There are no big stars. I mean, you can consider like Trent Richardson, and there are a couple other ones. I just mentioned him because I mentioned him earlier. But you get some guys, they don't have star power. They didn't market it. They said you could watch the games through their app. I tested it out over the weekend for the purposes of the show. You do not see the score or anything. It's not the actual broadcast. What you see is just the sky cam, kind of following the players along. Almost unwatchable. If you're used to watching modern sports, they all have, even if you're watching like some college amateur production or even some high schools, they have the stats on the screen because you almost need that to watch. It's a modern thing. No one watches games without knowing what's going on anymore. And I don't even know if there was they might have had the announcers on. I can't remember because I had to switch back to the actual game. They're trying some cool things with like GPS, player GPS, so that you can see what the spacing actually looks like. That's cool for kind of stat stuff, but overall that's not going to get people watching. And I think they really made a mistake not trying to do regional things. I think that if they would have grouped the teams regionally and tried to make rivalries, they could have made it work. Right now, like Orlando and Atlanta is supposed to be a rivalry. Like, why? Because their location. Atlanta doesn't even have a win. And then you have Birmingham. I honestly think they should have just went two close cities. Maybe do, considering the Hurricanes guy bought it, but what if he does Charlotte and Raleigh? And then those teams are rivals. I think it's like a 10-game season or something. So they make sure that they play 2 or 3 times. Like that's your rival. Then you do 2 teams in Florida. Do like Orlando and Tallahassee or something if you're going for like the smaller cities. and then just spread it out and do 2 in Texas, and then do 2 in California, and there's your 8 teams, or something similar to that, where you just have 2 close cities and you try to build rivalries. That's how, I mean, look at like Pittsburgh, Cleveland, or Pittsburgh, Baltimore. Do something like that. Find cities that naturally have rivals, Boston, New York, something similar, and start there. You spread it out. No one really has an attachment to the north. I mean, a lot of populations is in the Eastern time zone, and in the Northeast is a huge chunk of that. And what happens? They're completely left out. There's no team. In the Eastern time zone, what do we have? 2, 3? I don't know if Birmingham's in the East. Everyone else, it seems like it's out West. And you just no attachment. So, I don't know. I'm surprised that they didn't have money to have at least one full season. I thought they would have had the money up front. This is what we need. They're not showing ads, so I don't think they have anything in place. I want to like the league, but it's almost like a warm-up for the XFL. And did they announce teams for XFL, Matt? Do you know?
No, I don't know.
So that's what I'm hoping. XFL went the opposite direction. They went to the biggest media markets last time. I think they did like New York, Chicago, I mean, maybe Philly. I can't remember where all the teams were, LA, but they had the biggest markets. So this AAF did smaller markets, but like I said, sure, you can get people to watch, but naturally people aren't going to tune in to watch a Birmingham game because they have no attachment to that city. They don't have any other professional sports, or really you're trying to draw in on college football players, but you left out almost the entire ACC, except for Florida State and Georgia Tech. I think they're named, maybe Miami, some of the other ones. You left out the entire Big Ten. They don't have a team. I know Michigan's guys are scattered about, same with Ohio State and Penn State. Then you have the Pac-12 split, and the Big 12, half those teams are up north, so they don't have teams. It's just very hard to follow. Should have spread it out more, did something different. I don't know. Stick with the biggest cities. I don't even know. We'll see what happens. But I did watch the games. I know I joked with you, Matt, about Spurrier running those plays. They got the big win. I think it comes down to 2 things in this league: coaching and defense. Birmingham has a great defense. I'm not sold on their coaching. I watched the game. It was so boring because their defense, I don't even want to say it's good because it's hard to tell if they played anyone yet. But man, that game was boring. And then Orlando and forget. It's hard to that's another thing too. Yeah, you don't know the teams because it's so new. Like, I know I watched the game and I can tell you what colors they were, but I don't know the names yet. They're like, I remember watching it, but it just doesn't stick. But that game should have been lost by Orlando because they gave up the lead to San Antonio. It was like 8 points, and then it was just completely swung around because it was Riley coaching them. And you know that Riley can't adapt. He's so conservative. I remember him coaching at Nebraska, and it was almost like, at what point do they fall apart here? Oh, right here. Okay. That game's over. And so then I just sat back and watched as Spurrier made a few adjustments. He was even still running trick plays. And Riley's like, no, we're going to pound it out. And then even more fitting, Spurrier just ran it down his throat on that last drive. It was like they ran for almost no yards the entire game. And then they ran the entire clock out with like 4 minutes left, just pounding it down his throat. So it's all coaching, I think.
Did you hear Spurrier's comments after the game?
No, I didn't. What did he say?
He said that it was a really loud crowd tonight. He's like, quite. He's like, it was louder than Rocky Top.
Yeah, I did hear that. He said not quite as loud as the Swamp or something.
Yeah.
Which I did think was funny. At least he's out there having fun. But then I just wonder, okay, why are these guys coaching in the AAF? I understand Spurrier's kind of been retired, and it's like a short-term, hey, let's just go out here. Almost like I can get my name out there for some more publicity, I think is why Spurrier's doing it. Maybe he still has some competitive edge, but he doesn't want to put in a full year's work. But some of the other coaches, it's like, are you here because you can't get another job? Is that why your team is so boring out here? Like, give me something new. Hire some high school coaches. Take a chance, man. I want to see something fun and exciting, and they haven't delivered at all in that aspect. I don't know.
I almost wonder if this league is potentially doomed from the start. If they're putting a cap on the number of years that players can play. So I saw the salaries were like $250,000, and it was only a 3-year deal. Like you could only play in that league for 3 years. I think that kind of hurts the chances because it was rumored that they reached out to Colin Kaepernick to see if he'd be interested in playing, and he just like outright demanded $20 million or he wasn't playing. So kind of removed him from that equation.
Yeah, apparently Kaepernick signed some deal with the NFL. He settled. We'll never know what he paid. I think part of that agreement was like a non-disclosure agreement. I'm sure the NFL, a lot of people were saying that Kaepernick won. I'm sure the NFL got off light because whatever his Nike deal was, I'm sure that the NFL didn't have to pay because of that. I mean, he opted out of $14 million. Why would he think the AAF was going to pay him $20? It just didn't make any sense. But I did see that same report. I mean, all they need to do is get a couple big-name guys. Like, could you imagine if, and to be honest, maybe that's why Kareem Hunt was able to be re-signed, if we're being honest. Could you imagine if you get a couple guys like that get kicked out of the NFL? Like, let's say the Ray Rice situation happened today. He had nowhere to go. What if he did? And then they use that to promote. I mean, it's almost what they have to do, and I still think they should have went with big-time college players. I loved how the XFL, they knew they didn't have the name recognition, so they went with the fake names on the jerseys if you wanted them. And it worked. Everyone still remembers He Hate Me. I mean, if you watch any semblance, even if you didn't watch it, even in the NFL, they kept calling him Rod, He Hate Me Smart on the kickoff return for the Panthers. I think he signed with the Panthers. So you have you have a tie, and people remember him for that, and they still used it as marketing. It was genius. So, I mean, I want to watch football. I just want it to be more exciting. It's very boring. People say, well, there's no commercials. The game's faster. It does not feel faster whenever you're watching guys not complete passes and like weird breaks, because there are some times where a commercial would be more natural. I forget what game I was watching. It might have been the Birmingham game. Someone gets injured. And because they don't have any commercials lined up, they awkwardly had to show him lay on the field for like 5 to 10 minutes. And then they kept showing a replay of it because they had nowhere else to go. And at that point, I was thinking, like, show anything else. Do you not have highlights from the first half that you can show? And eventually they brought the card out, and he got carted off on a stretcher. And I was just thinking, like, I can see where having zero commercials, this is where it really hurts. And they don't have anything lined up to go back through like the first game highlights or whatever. So, I don't know. I'm not sold on the league. I'm not sour on it. A lot of people are starting to show their hate today with this buyout. I saw a lot of people attacking XFL for some reason. Like they think that the XFL is going to now be able to use this league to launch its own league and become a more, I saw this multiple people say, a more violent brand of NFL to try to get the crazy people to watch it. But to me, they're just making football back to football. It's not like they're making them go out of their way. The AAF had big hits first week. I didn't see so much of that this week, but show me some excitement. Kickoff sting, I thought it would bother me. Didn't really bother me. What do you think on that? No kickoffs. Do you even notice?
I was okay with it. I think one of the things that it does hurt, though, by not having that is that maybe it cuts down your special teams time, because now you're not having to worry about kickoff or kick return. So that could potentially lead to issues with your punt and punt return, where that may be where you're seeing more fumbles.
Well, see, this is what I thought. Okay, the big issue with kick return kickoff return is that you have guys that are lined up at like the 10-yard line, and they take a running start, and that's where you have the collisions. It's not so much the returner, it's like the up backs that are making crack blocks on the people running down, staying in their lanes. But I've seen this multiple times mentioned, that what if you made them punt to start the game? And I thought, what if they did a modified punt where there's not a snap? So you don't have the chance of the punter mishandling the snap. I mean, maybe you do have them snap. If that's what the reason is, that could add another miscue. But you have the punter stand back, and then you have whatever you want. If you're going to be kick returning and you want to line up like in a kick return while the team punts, then they can just fake it. Like that's the onside kick is the fake. They have to get 10 yards, similar to what they have now. You have like your 10-yard play or 14, whatever they made it. Make it like 4th and 15, or like they need to get 15 yards for a first down if they want to go for the onside kick or whatever per se. But you just punt instead. Then you don't have the lane collisions. You still have a chance that's more natural than, okay, this time we're not automatically going to give you the ball. This team's going to go for the chance. You don't have the element of surprise. And I like the idea that you could punt and instead run a fake punt because your team is down like 14 in the third quarter and try to get that hypothetical onside kick. But as a coach, what do you think of that? Do you honestly think that there's less injuries? I know they have the data, but would that eliminating kickoffs, would that make it easier compared to none at all?
To me, I'd rather just have it because that's the way I grew up with it, and to me, it just makes sense to have it. It's part of the game, and I think they've taken steps to try to make things better. Like, you're not seeing as many of the crushing blindside hits. Like, they're making it so that you can't just launch yourself at some of these people unsuspectedly, because those peel back blocks and crackbacks were some of the hardest hits that you'll see. And I think they're policing that more. They're policing it, somewhat better now. So I do think that they're taking the steps. It's just people want that knee-jerk reaction. When they see someone getting slammed, it's like automatically they want to just panic. But the equipment is better. And I don't think there's as much of a need for people to panic because they're taking the head out of the games, like with their tackling and things like that. And I think it's a safer game.
I agree that they're trying to make it safer. I think that the reason I like the punt idea is you're not losing that traditional, okay, this is football, you have the kickoff. I think right now the NFL's hurting because a lot of kickers are missing big kicks. And by getting rid of the kickoff, that's one less thing you have to work on. One less play that you have. You have your punt team, and that's it. Plus, I think punts are more exciting because you have a chance for it. To me, the touchback kick thing is such a waste of time that there's no point in doing it. But if you have a guy that's going to try to coffin punt, coffin corner, or do things like that, I think it adds another level of excitement. You can put the punt team back there. Plus, to me, I think punts are more exciting. Kick returns are okay, but they're not as exciting as a punt return just because of the way it's set up. And look at and I know this is probably some bias here, but like Charles Woodson, he returned his punt to win the Heisman. Same with Desmond Howard. You get the hello Heisman moments. Those are big punt moments because it's an excitement. That's going to be something. Is he going to return it? Is he not going to return it? It's better than, is he just going to kick it out of the end zone? Oh, or is he going to kick it out of bounds by accident? Because that's what it's kind of turned into. And then it's like commercial, kick it out of the end zone. Commercial, and then it's like already another commercial before that, before the extra point. So it's like too many commercials. Do the punt if you're going to have it, or just cut it out completely and get rid of those extra commercials. I don't know if they'll get rid of the commercials. They would just put them back to back. So give me the punt in between. I think we'll add another level of strategy too, because I think what happens then is currently right now, if you get a penalty that's assessed on the kickoff, before, like sometimes they would move you up. I know sometimes they tack it on to the end of the run now, but like what if you accepted it up to the 50 so that you could punt and really get like a coffin corner or like a personal foul? You're like, hey, we want it before the kick or before our punt, and we're going to go for it now. Go for it and then see what happens. I think it would add another level of excitement, but that's all I have for the show today. Do you have anything else you want to talk about the AAF?
Just with the AAF, I think if they clean up aspects of their passing game, like I feel like you mentioned it, there were a lot of drop passes, and I felt like, I don't know if it's because the quarterbacks and receivers haven't had a lot of time to mesh as far as like learning the playbook and being in sync with throwing and catching the different routes, but it just feels like that in itself has slowed the game down when you're looking at teams that can throw the ball, complete passes, and get down the field. That's the stuff that kind of picks the tempo up in some of these games. But when you have, like with Birmingham, they've been a very tough team to watch because they're so ground and pound that it's just, they literally are one iron blow after another.
I know. That's what everyone says. Like, they were like, if you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers, you should cheer for the Birmingham Iron. And then I watched that. I was like, oh my God, maybe if I was a Steelers fan in 1976, like, what are you doing to me? You want me to go nuts? But I did have, are they using the NFL size ball? Do you know?
I don't, but the one I do like the way that they have the stripe all the way around. That's something that growing up I had.
That's something a coach would notice, what the ball is decorated like.
Well, the only reason I say that is because growing up I had a ball that was similar, and I liked when if you threw a good spiral and you could just watch that ball go. I like seeing that spiral.
Well, that's one of the things that I was wondering what if they just, because I don't think these guys have any chance, like quarterbacks, of making an NFL roster. If I'm being honest, it's not like the XFL back in the day. There's just so much tape on college kids coming out. It's a whole different game. So it's very hard for a guy to come out of nowhere because he won the AAF to get a chance with the Browns. I just don't think it's going to happen. Why not just use a smaller ball? Use a smaller ball if they are using one that big. Maybe they're using college size. I don't know. A smaller ball is easier to catch and easier to throw, and I think you'll get better offense that way. And just watching the games, it made me think over the weekend that I think these guys are using an NFL-sized ball. They're not used to it, and they're not able to handle it. It's a lot different, and like especially with the 3-year limit, like you said, if you're never going to play in the NFL, it's not like you're Tom Brady where you're out there for 18 years throwing the same ball, so you're just used to it. Stick with the college-sized ball. And maybe they are. I just don't know, and I don't have no idea why they're fumbling and stuff like they are. I don't know. That was my last thought was, and I had it in my notes somewhere where I put, what size ball are they using? Use a smaller ball, and we'll stop seeing these. So, I don't know. As a coach, do you think that makes a big deal? Because in high school, you can pick your ball, right?
Yes, there are certain ones. They give you a limit on which ones you can use. You can choose from. But yeah, I do think it matters. And actually, to go back, I was one of the ones that had benefited. To go from a TD size ball to a TDS, and it's just throwing a fatter ball as compared to a longer ball. It definitely just felt better grip wise and throwing wise. It has an advantage.
I think I'm the same way. I think I like the fatter ball too. And the NFL is just bigger and longer. So if you can go a little bit smaller, give them a couple different options, but it's easier to catch. You'll see a lot more spectacular one-handed catches and things like that, which I think is what the league wants. Give it a go. But that's all I have for the AAF. Do you want to get into the final bell? Anything you have to wrap up the show?
Just sounds like there's going to be some really bad weather up here in PA, so people be safe. Don't fall and bust your ass.
Yeah, down here, we're going to get hit with some rain. I thought for sure that That might be why our Skype was messing up. It seems like every time we have a storm, that the connection's awful, which I don't understand why. I would feel like most internet cables are buried these days, but who knows. In terms of sports, nothing. This is almost like the dead period before some more excitement in March Madness. So we have that to look forward to. I'm ready for the committee to mess a bunch of that up, just because a lot of the blue bloods this year seem to have strong teams like Duke. Kentucky just knocked off Tennessee. And you're going to have the overrated teams like Virginia that has never... They're almost like the Purdue. I was thinking of this the other day. They're like the Purdue of the ACC. That for some reason, they always end up with like an easy schedule so that they're like in the top of the conference. Sure, they might win it. And then they get into the NCAA tournament and they blow it. And everyone's like, I don't know how that happened. I thought for sure this would be the year they win a championship. And they never do. I don't think either of them, I didn't fact check, but I don't think Virginia or Purdue has ever won a national championship in basketball. Maybe Purdue back in the days with like Gene Katie. Was that their coach? I don't even know.
I don't know.
I should fact check before I start talking trash on teams like that. But I think that's just my feel. Virginia, of course they would lose to a 16 seed. Why not? How would you have any confidence in them at all? But then there they are right there up with Duke because they have the easier conference schedule. And the only reason I notice that is because, of course, Michigan and Michigan State have to square off 2 times like the last week of the Big Ten schedule and then play in the Big Ten tournament. Like, of course, they have to put that game at the end so that both teams potentially knock themselves out and let Purdue claim another easy Big Ten championship while they're spending the weekend at Rutgers. So, whoever makes the Big Ten schedule... It's like, do you want your teams to ever win a championship? Like, do you ever? It's almost like they watch the SEC schedule Wofford in the week before rivalry week, and they're like, wow, it's almost like a bye week for them. So nice. But here, Penn State, you got to play Michigan and Ohio State, and then Michigan State, all 3 in November, and then I don't know why they were so beat up going into bowl season. It's like they're doing the same thing with basketball. Like, Michigan State, they lost Nick Ward. I believe Nick is his first name. One of their big stars with the broken hand or hairline fracture in his hand. Going into like the toughest part of their schedule right before the tournament, and it's not going to get them anywhere near prepared. So just feel bad for fellow Big Ten team, even though rivals, but that's all I got for this show. Hopefully AAF gets some stuff straightened out and we can see some better football. I just have a feeling by the time AAF is playing good football, that season will be over and we'll see what happens. If the league is around to compete with the XFL, hopefully XFL makes teams in better locations. Pittsburgh, give me one down here in Raleigh. If you do a Pittsburgh one, definitely make a team in Cleveland because I need a team to hate. If you don't have a team to hate, then you're just beating up on a bunch of other teams you don't care about. So that's my sign off. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.